It's going to be how to run an economic node. Wow. This is from Scoresby, January 8th, Bitcoin territory. 48 comments, 24,000 sats. Wow, 24,000 sats? Is that the most this year so far for the number one top story of the
I
week?
think so. I think it's,
Wow.
you know, it's
Congrats to Scoresby.
It's definitely one of the better
who I
posts
haven't
of the
seen
year.
in a really long time. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Keyan, what is this?
So this is a hard this is a hard topic to understand, but Scoresby does an excellent job explaining what an economic node is on Bitcoin and why it's important. Why, of all the node types you could have, maybe second only to a mining node, you might or a miner, you might want a economic node because it helps you or it allows you to enforce consensus rules and participate in voting on consensus in a way that simply running a node and doing nothing with your node does not. And so he kind of explains what he means, what it means to be an economic node, what it means to do something with your node. And specifically, it's you attempting to acquire Bitcoin that follows the rules of your node, the rules of your choosing, by trading things for that Bitcoin. And that is you effectively voting for certain consensus rules. And so if you want to if you actually want to participate in Bitcoin consensus, it's not necessarily enough just to run a node. You have to run a node and do things with it, meaning exchange things for it. Miners are economic nodes, and you could view them as economic nodes because they're exchanging hash rate for Bitcoin. But other types of economic nodes, he describes his own poster store here. Scoresby is exchanging his labor, his posters for Bitcoin, and that makes him an economic node. And if someone sends him a Bitcoin that does not follow those rules, he can refuse shipment, and that's him saying, "You need to get on the right consensus. You need to get on the thing that I think is valuable." And so, if you're running a node and you're not actually doing things with your node that is accepting Bitcoin on your node, you aren't playing this role in the network. At most, you're able to, you gain some privacy if you're like watching your own wallet, your own UTXOs. Maybe you're relaying transactions. A lot of people don't, and blocks, and helping the network that way, helping some of the censorship resistance, helping people get transactions to miners. But you're not playing much of a role in consensus. And that's kind of the role you want to play, because if you can imagine, if you really want Bitcoin consensus to change in some way, the best thing you can do is have like the most economic node on Bitcoin's network. So, either again being a miner and exchanging a lot of hash rate for Bitcoin, or being a very large merchant, or being a very large LSP. Probably allows you to exert quite a bit of consensus pressure. Running an exchange and exchanging fiat for Bitcoin. Anyway, that it's a great explanation. Here in the footnotes, he quotes a lot of people, saying the same thing. I think for me, I encountered this idea most clearly in Crypto Economics, which was written by Voskill. We talked about him, I think, a podcast or two ago, but he thought a lot about these kinds of things, and he lays out. Is where I kind of began using the word economic node a lot, is when I started reading him.
Yeah, this is very well put together. I love this example that he gives. Hodlers do not enforce consensus rules, and then he goes into the reasoning why. He even goes into like a forked situation where you would have a shitcoin, and it's really good stuff. I'm really impressed with this.
Yeah. Wow. It's like one of the more important concepts.
It's almost like
Bitcoin.
a research paper. Almost.
Yeah, I'd say the most important concept in Bitcoin that most Bitcoiners don't understand.
Put this on whatisbitcoin.com.
There you go.
So we had the top comment. The top comment was from... Oh, where was the top comment? The top comment was from Elvis Mercury. He said, "I really like this phrasing." He's talking about your expression of the rules is only as strong as your demand for the coin that follows those rules. makes me think differently about the value of Lightning routing nodes, in particular, and the leverage they exert on the network, mediating all the transactional demand. Scoresby said, the Lightning Network definitely makes it harder for me to think about. For instance, if we use a big LSP as an example, for like Phoenix, they do a lot of payments, but their Bitcoin node only sees these payments in aggregate. They open or close a channel. I'm not an expert on Lightning, but it feels like transactions that really matters is the open, because in the channel close, the two parties are introducing new coins, but rather deciding where to apportion the sats that are already in the channel. So it makes sense that Phoenix exerts influence over Bitcoin consensus rules. Yeah, how would you, Keyan, how would you picture that? How would you think through that on the Lightning Network? Would it just come down through would it come down to the LSP or to the multis or the Lightning channels that you are making with your peers? Because you're settling at some point.
Yeah, at some point you're settling. But so I think what the scenario we're imagining is you've already opened your channels, but Bitcoin experiences a fork while that channel is open. And the way Lightning channels work is you're pre-signing a bunch of transactions. You're kind of double spending with your counterparty, and you're kind of with them negotiating what the correct double spending is, or so that it's only a single spending. But it's really when you go back to chain that becomes really important. There's null count links here to a post asked a few years ago about this specific question.
So the question was Lightning channel hard fork scenario. Just wondering what happens to Lightning channels after a hard fork. Would it be the opening or closing balance or some kind of snapshot? Topher?
The channel gets duplicated, so it exists on both forks. So nothing really changes.
I think if you, as a person participating in the channel, you would probably try to claim your Bitcoin on both forks. That would be the safest thing to do. And then, maybe make your decision about which consensus you like. Or if you only really preferred one of the forks, you would just go and make sure your channel was cooperatively closed on that fork.
Yeah, well, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, look at that. I can see why it was #1 post this week. This is great. Do you have any other great stuff? Pleb Poet said, or I'll just let her read her comment. That's never been a thing before. Here, you read your comment on Stacker.News Live. Wow, there we go.
I said, ooh, I totally get it. The game theory of the node is still attached to practical economic principles. That's pretty much what he demonstrated in his thing, yeah. Right?
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Is she right? No one answered her question, though.
Oh, the game theory of a node is still attached to practical economic. I don't know what you mean by practical economic principles, I guess, but the game theory is attached to economic principles. What do you mean? What do you mean by practical economic? Oh, you mean it's still
Just like supply and demand, I guess. Like if you're going to use the coin, like he was saying, like
yeah.
you're enforcing the demand
Yeah.
when you use the coin.
Yeah, it's definitely still that way. It's not like things change dramatically as you get to the game theory of node running.
This is a great post. Stackers, if you didn't check it out this week, you should go and read it. You will be very well rewarded with knowledge. How to run an economic node from Scoresby. That's great.
Buy a Scoresby poster.
You didn't impress Topher.
Oh, Scoresby, your SSL cert is expired on
what?
bitcoinscoresby.com.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah.
10 days old. It expired as the year changed.
It's okay. We'll get it fixed. It's a new year.
I feel like he missed one of the biggest points of running a node, and it's not in his post.
There we go. This is why Topher didn't acknowledge the post. I was wondering. I knew there was something. What'd you find, Topher?
Well, so he writes, when it comes to enforcing the rules of Bitcoin, about the only things your node can do are refuse to add a transaction or refuse to add a block. But there's a third point that should be on here that's more important than the other two, is that you get to decide or refuse to relay transactions and blocks. And that's more important than the first two because like Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer network. So it's not like a hub and spoke like the traditional internet. So you really rely on your peers to be able to send you transactions and to relay your transactions out and blocks.
Wow.
I think what he said implies those things, because if you are rejecting a transaction or rejecting a block, you're also not relaying it.
Well,
but he could have acknowledged relaying. He didn't acknowledge it, but he does acknowledge relaying somewhere in here. I recall.
He says like your node acts as a dead end for transactions, or doesn't record the block. But I don't see anything about.
I think the dead end kind of implies that it's not getting relayed.
Because of the vast majority of blocks and transactions don't belong to you. You're just relaying them. So by choosing what you relay, especially if you're a node that has a public IP and can accept inbound connections, you're even more important than a lot of other nodes. So you get to decide what the policy is. Mm-hmm. And if enough of you agree on what the policy, and you can see this with mempool policy, where mempool policy dictates what transactions can propagate. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's
it's a good point.
We fight about that all the time. So
it's a good point.
Like it's a very topical thing.
Point, but anyway,
he mentions it at the bottom. I believe more about relaying, and that in addition to this economic node role, relay, you are by just running a node without doing other things with your node, relaying is an important role that your node plays.
Yeah, I think that, but I think Topher's saying that he should put it here at the top.
Yeah, more precedence.
Yeah, at the top.
So you have different nodes with different mempool policies. Like you have Libre node, you have what's
knots.
You have knots. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, so it's like it's the most contentious part about running a node is what are your policies for relaying transactions?
Day to day, certainly, because we're dealing with a fork every 4 years at most. So, and not hard forks. So, yeah.
There you go, Scoresby. If you get a chance, go back and remake it. I mean,
I agree with the other points.
There you go. Any other fixes, Topher, that you see here?
No. Just like little nitpicks. Like somewhere he's talking about how if there's a fork and you selling your coin isn't that big of a, like he downplays it and he uses the example of a one-to-one trade, but that's in practice that's not what happens. You're signaling to the open market what is the exchange rate between these two coins, and that does matter. That's how like Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash was decided. Is you could see like what the exchange rate was between the two coins, and there was a clear winner. And so,
thanks, Brian Armstrong.
Yeah, so it's one of the ways that you get to vote in a fork is you get to basically dump your coins in exchange for you increase your position on your side of the fork while someone else increases their position on their side of the fork.
His rebuttal to that, he used an analogy for the rebuttal to that, and it's like being a vegan. It's like
I saw that part.
Yeah, so being a vegan and supporting your veganism by selling cheap hamburgers.
But you're not selling, you're exchanging. So you're getting rid of all the meat that you don't want anymore in exchange for more of what you do want.
That's an interesting
rebuttal. In
rebuttal.
that exchange, you're signaling to the market,
I want grain instead of beef.
And the market picks up on those signals and allows
and
other
they start
people
producing more
to start
grain.
making their economic decisions.
Yeah, I don't think I would say he's not. This is I think a subtle point that I personally didn't really comprehend too much. But I think what he's suggesting is that at some point, especially in a Bitcoin future where there aren't exchanges, because exchanges, in my opinion, are probably the biggest economic nodes, and so that's basically what we're talking about right now. Is like that exchange rate matters a lot because, and I think it matters a lot mostly because exchanges have the biggest economic nodes. But I don't know if that's, but in a future where that isn't true, where exchanges don't exist and it's really just fork against fork and not fork and dollar. Is that true? I think that's what the exercise he's going through here, which I had never gone through, so it's a little bit foreign to me. Maybe you have a better sense of it.
Well, so you can't. I mean, if you choose to just look at it in isolation, it's a fork of this coin. So now there's like two sides of a fork. Then you're missing the bigger picture, which is, okay, but Bitcoin is a currency among many other currencies. And that's why we have exchanges, is to put a price on exchanging between different currencies. And so the overall market, what they want to see is they want to see price signals. And so if you just look at this in isolation, oh, this is two sides of a fork where people are just exchanging coins between their fork, that's one thing. But the rest of the market looks at this because they need to put a price on what the coin is on each side of that fork, what the exchange rate should be for other currencies. And so you are signaling to the rest of the network in participating in this, what should the exchange rate be for your particular side of the fork when it comes to other currencies. And so it's easy to highlight USD because that's by far the biggest one. But yeah, I mean, that's important because even if it's, essentially you can look at it as one-to-one in isolation. It's like, well, what is the USD price? What is the price against other cryptocurrencies? How well can that money that you're receiving in exchange move into other currency pairs?
So Topher, you know what you need to do? You need to my thoughts or my reply to Scoresby's How to Run an Economic Node. You need like a Stacker.News post.
I'd be curious.
I've seen you do these before too, where you'll do like your own blue slime.
Oh, that's right.
Post, and it'll be like, oh crap.
What was your last rebuttal? You did a rebuttal.
He does these from time to time.
Do you remember
that? I think it was on eCash.
Right. All right. That makes sense. Yeah.
But, you should do one. You should do one on this one.
I don't want to dump on Scoresby's post. It's a great post.
I don't think he loves this stuff.
Yeah.
Scoresby loves.
He wrote it to learn.
He wants to learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scoresby loves this stuff. I'm trying not to speak for Scoresby, but knowing him, he would be okay listening.
I'm very passionate about the fork thing because I feel like
it's coming.
This is a conspiracy in my head. I don't even believe this is a real conspiracy. This is only for my personal amusement, but I feel there's a conspiracy for Bitcoin derivative products like ETFs to control as much Bitcoin as possible that on paper belong to other people, so that when a hard fork happens, they essentially have control over which fork is chosen.
Yeah.
And
through this exchange rate mechanism.
Yes, because essentially they get to decide which fork is valid. Not
which fork is valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get to decide.
Interesting.
So, and they have a bunch of money to play with to make that happen, because then that they can manipulate the liquidity in the markets because they have all of that at their disposal and they have control over it. Like even though you have a share of an ETF, you don't get to control the underlying asset. And so all these economic games can be played with your money. I mean, this is what Alameda Research was doing with people's money, and a lot of other exchanges do this behind the scenes, and just markets in general. But yeah, that like you have some share that represents your exposure to an asset, but you don't control the asset. So that asset can be used in market warfare, and it can be used against you.
Right.
And you really don't have any say about that.
Yeah.
So like GameStop stock. Like if you're holding GameStop stock, like that stock's being manipulated to the moon, up and down, and you don't have any control over that necessarily because the players that are involved
have much more power to manipulate price.
They can halt trading.
Yeah.
Which affects the stock price, which affects your portfolio. So it's like the same with you hold this share to an ETF. If there's a fork, it doesn't even matter like what you want, what fork you believe in, or what the price of your coin is going to be for whatever fork that you agree in. It's like you don't have any control of that at all. Whereas if you hold Bitcoin, you actually get to participate in that. And I think that's important.
It definitely is important. So you're saying that people who are in the ETF need to view them as not in control of that Bitcoin that they get the price exposure to. But you're not saying that ETFs have more power over consensus, are you?
They do. They do.
Well, technically, like let's be honest here. Like, they're not holding Bitcoin, are they? Like, Coinbase is holding.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other issue.
That's
Are they
what I'm
actually
saying,
holding
like,
Bitcoin?
That's what I'm saying. It's a lot more centralized.
I was just going to say that Scoresby, I think, addresses this point in here, and I think Voskuil does in his book as well, where while the pricing mechanism attack is possible and it likely has some effect on the market, it's not sustainable. Like, eventually, like, if people really want the other fork instead, and BlackRock is basically cratering the price by making the exchange rate bad, eventually they run out of that power, and then the price of the thing that they're cratering can begin to compete with it on level footing. He that's one of the.
Who says that?
Scoresby in here, he talks about.
But who says that? Who's he quoting?
Voskuil. I mean, he's not quoting Voskuil, but similar ideas are shared there. But it's like because the example he goes through is like BlackRock is trading BlackRock Bitcoin. They're selling you 100 BlackRock Bitcoin.
It's right here, right? The dumping fallacy.
Yeah, the dumping fallacy.
So he says there's a theory that selling units from one side of a split coin for the units on the other reduces relative utility of the sold coin. However, each sale requires a buyer. As a trade, the action is symmetrical, and therefore the theory is invalid.
I think the conclusion is that it's invalid because it isn't sustainable. So, but I'm not real. I haven't gone too deep.
But didn't they say that during the hash wars, right? That wasn't sustainable for heirs to continue throwing money at the hash power. Do you remember that when that was going on?
The hash wars.
When Bitcoin Cash, the block wars.
Oh yeah. Well, so most exchanges made both coins available to their customers. There were a couple of custodians that didn't, but most did. So people just voted with their wallet. But I mean, I agree that if you believe in the fundamentals of Bitcoin, then if BlackRock coin comes out, then it doesn't matter what the price is. You're going to stick with Bitcoin and you're going to dump your BlackRock coin.
I mean, it's inevitable that we're going to have paper Bitcoin, Keyan. I mean, I don't know if I've thought a lot about this. I've already come to terms with it.
I think it's a bit beside the point that I think Topher was making. But yeah, well, we're going to have paper Bitcoin. People want they don't want to hold custody.
Technically, last cycle we did with Block, or was it not BlockFi?
BlockFi is one of them.
Was it? No, what's the other one? Gosh, it doesn't matter.
So the guy who went to jail. Mm-hmm. Oh, what was it? It's like a C, right? It's like CoinCensus or some shit like that.
Some shit coin.
I don't know.
Anyways, good points, Topher.
Yes.
This conversation, I think, could. Scoresby, you might have a part 2 here, or Topher, you might have a rebuttal, but this conversation is really interesting.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a fork this cycle, and
roll the tape. Somebody play it back.
We have a fork every cycle.
I feel like,
but so it's really
somebody, man. Car 2023, 2020.
You're the Bitcoin prophet, Car.
2023 Car and like was so on point. He saw all this. He saw this coming.
Can't have a soft fork without a hard fork.
Ooh.
It's always invites contention.
Thank you. I've been saying this.
Always.
I've been saying this. You know, I'm gonna start writing my things down. I wish there was a platform that I could put all my theories.
But then you couldn't like misremember what you said and
say that again. I'm not kidding you.
Well, don't you have your own zine?
I could put it on there. But this feels better.
Anyway, it's good. It's nice to be. I think this is good to get in preparation for the fork. That seems like it might be coming. I think.
Honestly, Jimmy said this in 24, and if Jimmy, you're watching right now, he did say that there was I forget what post he posted on Stacker.News, but I think it was right around when the ordinal stuff was going on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I remember that. You and I talked about it on this podcast, but. Predicting a fork in Bitcoin is a lot like predicting the price is going to go up.
Well, I mean, Jimmy has experience with all this stuff, so I mean, it's a little bit different. Like if it would come from somebody like me, I'd be like, whatever, Car. But like Jimmy's been around the block, like he knows like these people that are involved.
It doesn't change that it's like a prediction. It's like Jimmy. I know. I would believe Jimmy more if he said the price is going to go up, but it's still just, it just kind of makes sense from like the dynamics of the system that the price is going to go up. That there's going to be four.
Maybe Jimmy
he did attribute it to ordinals though.
Yeah, maybe Jimmy will write.
And it does seem like the ordinal folks are.
Maybe if you're listening, Jimmy, you'll write a updated post on what your thoughts on that. I would love to read it. Anyways, haven't seen him around the comments. Have you seen him around the comments?
I don't think so. He might be traveling.
Oh, okay. Anyways, cool. It's great, man. No wonder this was number one.
Yeah, it's very good. I'm saying it's the stuff we need to all be learning about, preparing talking about. This is the stuff. Yeah, we shouldn't be talking about whatever. I don't know what we're talking about now. Bitcoiners.
Run your own node.
Trump, Bitcoin Reserve.
Your own node.
Run your own node. Accept Bitcoin in exchange for things.
And be patient with Lightning.